Hello, 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 my friends, and thank you for joining me. I'm Nicholas W. Fuller, and this is Person Behind the Pages, the show where we get to know the creators that make the things we love. Tonight, I am joined by James Lloyd Dulin. How you doing, James?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Nicholas.
My pleasure, James. Thank you for being here. I was just right before I hit the button, I was like, "Ooh, I've got toys to play with that I haven't played with." You listen to this. I got some like fun music we can do, you know?
Nice.
That was my theme song that I did, but it turns out like YouTube users don't want to just sit and watch me headbang to a theme song. I don't know why, but
Next time I need to like come out of a back arena or something like that with some explosions going off to the side.
It's James Lloyd Dulin.
I watched my WWE in the past, so I'll come out, throw up an old '90s,
There you go. I love it. Well, so James, for anyone that's not familiar with you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, sir?
I am James Lloyd Dulin, and I am the author of the Malitu series, No Heart for a Thief, No Safe Haven, and coming out soon, June 24th, Only a Grave Will Do. This is a dark adult coming-of-age story that takes place under two timelines. One is a mentor-mentee relationship trying to kind of navigate a world in which their home has been colonized by a foreign empire, and the other is the mentor telling his backstory, trying to keep his mentee from falling into the tragic footsteps of his past.
That sounds exciting. I definitely want to get into talking about your stories at some point, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later. But we were just talking before I clicked the live button about some of the things that we've been reading lately and some of the TV adaptations. You were saying, what was it that you were just reading and you pushed everything off your TBR to make room for?
So I was actually finishing up Mistborn 3, and I was like, I'm not going to finish it in time. So I pushed Brandon Sanderson aside. He'll still be there, probably with 20 more books by the time I get to him. But I wanted to read Murderbot before the show came out, because I was saying, I can't go from TV show or movie to book. I can't go that way. I can go book to TV show or movie. I can't go the other way because I can't immerse myself in a book after I get all the images and I know what the next step is in the story. The pacing is off to me when I go from the book, from the television show or the TV or the movie to the book. It just doesn't work in my brain.
Yep.
I can't calm down enough and just settle into a story that way.
I totally get that, and I feel the same way. I tried. My first exposure to Game of Thrones was the HBO show.
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah, which was fantastic. I mean, at least the first few seasons, fantastic. I loved it. Like I was blown away. Like the first, I remember like I used to on Hey Bo, how you doing, sir? Thanks for hanging out.
Hey Bo.
Game of Thrones, used to watch it every Sunday night, I think. I mean, I'm pretty sure it came out on Sunday night, but I can't remember if we watched it on Sunday or if we waited until Friday. But regardless, like once a week, I would get together with friends anyway, and we would play like tabletop games and whatever. But then it kind of got to be like a Game of Thrones viewing party, which was, it was lovely, right? But like as it went on, I tried to get into the books, and I'm like, I don't know, dude. I already like I'm trying like so much of the books is focusing on Eddard Stark in the beginning, and I'm like, I know that he's gonna get it,
Spoiler alert for anybody who's watching.
What I mean is he's going to get a big grand prize.
Yes, it's a very happy series. No, it's the reason I've actually never finished the Game of Thrones TV series, because I was like delaying it because I was going to read these books. And then I got somewhere into, I think, the fourth book, and I was just like, I'm not feeling it. much anymore, and I stopped with the series, and so I just never got into the TV series.
Okay.
I've heard
Well,
good things. I know everybody hates the last season.
interesting. So you said you never finished it, but you never watched it at all, the series, the TV series?
I've tried to start it a couple of times.
Wow.
Um, it hasn't grabbed me. I don't know. I love the new one. What is that? House of Dragon?
Yeah, yeah, House of Drag. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bo calling me out on the same thing you did. Spoilers. Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah.
bad. My bad. No, yeah, yeah. House of the Dragon. Yeah, I haven't. See, obviously that one's coming out now, and my life is very different now. Like, one, I've got 2 young kids, and that's not going to work. And
They
2,
don't
my
want to
wife.
watch?
They. I'm not
I'm just
giving
enjoying
them
you
that
chuckling
option.
like a madman at the idea of your young kids watching this, either
Right.
because they'd be scared or they'd be way too excited,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't know which is worse.
My 4-year-old daughter would definitely be horrified. My 11-year-old boy might be into it, but that ain't happening. Right.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones is old. It's that's what we were kind of like James was saying, that he's reading Murderbot so that he can go watch it without being spoiled. So
Yeah.
how many books are in the series?
I
I should
think
know
there
this,
are
but
like 6 novellas or something like that.
okay,
I've
okay.
only gotten a novella and a half into it. Like I started a week before. Hey Joe, I started like a week before the series came out on Apple.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished the first novella. Quick read, really interesting character to be in the head of.
Mm-hmm.
I really like a lot of the world building stuff and the character development stuff going on with Murderbot. The plot kind of just ended for me. It was just kind of fell out of nowhere at the end. It was just a very
Abrupt.
unfulfilling end. It felt like it
Yeah.
needed 3 more chapters.
Mm.
Um, and the side characters are definitely side characters. Like they get very little characterization.
Mm.
Um, but that's not what drives the progression of the novellas. It's being inside of this interesting character's head. So I liked it. I am reserving judgment on the TV show. I've only seen the first 2 episodes so far. It was
Mhm.
pretty good. It didn't necessarily hit the exact tone that I was thinking in my head, but I'm
Mm.
interested to see what they do with it.
I will say, like, I mean, I've already heard good things about the books, of course. They're
Yeah.
they're very well regarded. But I wasn't super familiar with the premise at all, but I saw like one of the previews for the show, and I was like,
Mhm.
this seems like a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've got a depressed robot that's hacked his own like regulations and he can do whatever the hell he wants, but instead he just wants to watch serialized TV, which I can totally understand.
Who doesn't? We're literally talking about watching serializing TV, right?
Yeah, it's very meta.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's funny. What are some of like just continuing this for fun? What are
Yeah.
some other like adaptations you've enjoyed recently, or
Um,
or that you're looking forward to? I definitely can think of one that I'm very much looking forward to.
what are you looking forward to?
Project Hail Mary.
Oh yeah, I've not read the book.
Oh, just let's
Yeah.
just end this now and go start it. Just like
just
it's gonna be better.
just sit on camera and start reading. Yeah.
I mean, we could do, yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got a copy. I'll read it out. Should I read it out loud to you?
Yeah, that would be nice. I enjoy a good story time.
Story time. Oh my god, it's so good. Like, how much of the premise do you already know? How much of the?
Very little.
See, I personally I knew nothing, and I think that's actually the way to go into it.
Okay.
So I would maintain that if it were me. But
Okay.
man, like, did you read and like The Martian?
I have not read it. I've only watched the movie,
How'd you?
the
Okay,
adaptation. I enjoyed the adaptation. Was it? Is it close?
it is. It is. Very close. There are certain parts that are fairly different. Like the opening is different, but they changed the opening because of the medium. Like the opening of the book that is has like more kind of internality and whatnot that just doesn't work as well on the film. And like the film, they wanted to kind of get you in the action, boom. And like the book, they wanted to give you like, okay, the action already happened. Both work really well, and I think it was a smart choice, actually. You know.
Okay.
But the like much of the rest of the movie is very, very faithful. But they are like, I did find them both enjoyable experiences. I know that we were just talking about how sometimes like the film, be it TV or movie, can ruin the book. But literally with The Martian, I watched the movie first, and I walked over to the bookstore that happened to be next to the movie theater that I watched it, and I bought the book, and I started reading, like, I think the same day, you know?
Just tell me it wasn't the one with like the poster for the movie on the cover of the book.
Yeah, that is the one that I got. Yeah.
You got like
Matt Damon's
this is the book.
like,
Matt Damon is in this book.
Yes, yeah. Just Matt Damon right there. That's all. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I hate when they do that. I get it marketing wise, but I hate when they do that.
Yeah, I hear you. I do have nice broken binding editions of it now because I want to give away, and that was really cool. Yeah.
Oh, the broken binding editions. I love those. But adaptations, I don't know. Silo was a really good adaptation. I've never read Wheel of Time, but I was enjoying the progression of where Wheel of Time was going. I'm sad it's canceled because I thought season 3 was really really good, and I thought there were moments of season 2 that were just amazing. There were some of those episodes were just really hard hitting in season 2, especially around her. I forget the characters' names, but when one of the main characters was basically magically enslaved and kind of her will was bent by another character. It was just so visceral. It was such a good episode.
Nice.
So I think the series had a lot of standout moments like that, and I wish they could have given more time to realize more of it.
Fair. You need to respond to Joe here, and I'm in the same boat. So defend us both for a minute.
Well, Joe, I don't have time for a 15-book series. I'm sorry. That's all I got. And for a book series that so many people love, and there are a large group of the fandom that call the middle section the slog, is not an enjoyable premise for me to get into a series. Like, you'll love the first 4 books, and then
and then it gets awful.
Books.
Yeah.
But that middle 8, it's just really hard.
It's right. Yeah. I haven't read it either, but I think you summed it up very well. You can read the first 2 and DNF like I did. Does that counts? You just so now you get to say, Joe, that you read Wheel of Time? I guess okay.
I mean, Joe will say whatever he needs to say whenever he needs to say.
Joe,
you cannot believe a word that comes out of Joe's mouth.
Joe is lovely.
He's great. And especially when he reviews my book, you can actually say that that's believable. Everything else,
maybe. Yeah, I hear you. Just for funsies, because they were right behind me. Yes, I got the Matt Damon one.
Oh, there you go.
I got it right.
Was Matt Damon good in the book?
Mark Watney is wonderful. So we'll say that. This is the broken binding one, though. Look at that.
Oh, there you go. That's much nicer.
Right?
Yeah.
And of course, because it's the broken binding, we get lovely sprayed edges.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, let me see. I don't think there's anything that's going to give anything away here. There's Project Hail Mary from Broken Binding.
And I love that there's some cohesiveness between the 2.
Yes.
Yeah, that's nice.
Right? Yep.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no connection between the two stories, right?
I don't think there's anything at all that's mentioned from The Martian in Project Hail Mary. Like, it feels a little bit like it could have been like I don't want to say a sequel, but like it definitely does feel like a spiritual successor, though. Like
Okay.
it's gonna hit like some vaguely similar notes, but like anything more than that is going to be very like I don't want to say anything more. You know, like I said, I
Okay.
really feel like going into it with a
Yeah.
the
So no aliens show up with laser swords later in the book.
God, who told you? Who told you? Maybe Oh my goodness. I love this so much, actually. I like Matt Damon.
Matt Damon's not bad. Yeah.
Matt Damon's yeah. All right. Who would Matt Damon play in the movie adaptation of your series?
I mean, that's a hard one because pretty much all the characters in my books are people of color. So unless they're part of the colonizing empire, and in that case, most of them are like behind, like the main characters are behind uh, veils
Oh,
from the
interesting.
colonizing empire. So it would kind of be like Matt Damon does so many of those just um, random cameos, and
Mm-hmm.
you barely know it's Matt Damon until the end. So
Mm-hmm.
Matt Damon would do that, but he would be one of the Empire's priests. So he'd be veiled the whole time, and you're just like, is that Matt Damon's voice?
I just saw Lilo and Stitch, the new
Mm-hmm.
live action Lilo and Stitch, and like one of the characters is Zach Galifianakis, and the whole time I'm going, is that sure enough, I was watching the credits at the end just to be like, that really is Zach Galifianakis,
Yeah.
you know? But he put, you know how Zach got like Jack Nicholson always plays Jack Nicholson. He's just like
Mm-hmm.
he's different, but he's like it's Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
I feel like Zach Galifianakis was like in danger of being that, but here he really was playing a character, you know? Yeah.
But I heard no accent, and that's sad.
That is true. That is true. And then that was a little kind of off-putting initially, but then like I saw him like the character puts on a disguise and basically turns into Zach Galifianakis, and I'm like, oh, I get why they did that now, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, Matt Damon in one of my stories. I don't know. Like my first thought was maybe like the main character, honestly, and that could play, especially given like he's played Jason Bourne, like, but also maybe like the side character that's like the tavern owner, and it is kind of like the sort of quintessential tavern owner. But I do imagine like someone a little bit older for that role. But
How old is Matt Damon? He's getting older.
He's no spring chicken for sure, but
Probably in his 50s now.
Joe says he could play my main character, and Joe would know because Joe beta read for me. Thank you, Joe.
Oh,
thank you. Yes.
That was very nice of Joe.
Matt Damon could be Poe Taj.
Well, let's get a call out to his agent and make this happen. Joe, do you have the connections?
Mr. Damon, if you're watching. unlike Jimmy Kimmel, we will not run out of time for you, Mr. Matt Damon. Interesting. You're describing being enslaved, right? Real-time adaptation as a whole was a terrible job. They completely reroute so many character arcs to fit the showrunner's idea. Right.
I mean, it's hard because I don't know much to compare it to. I think the first season was pretty bad. I don't think anybody's defended that too well. But I liked a lot that was happening in the third season, especially. But I also don't know a whole lot to compare it to. I don't know what was changed and how. But yeah, I think it's always sad when you lose properties that people are invested in. Like there are shows that I don't care about, but yeah, it sucks when people lose them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like I guess, I was going to say actually that more fantasy is good for all of us, but maybe not if it's like not something that people are enjoying. But at the same time, some people were enjoying it. I don't know. I'm like, I was so pumped for Rings of Power, and I didn't even finish the first season just because it never really felt like it got going. At least not like.
Yeah.
I watched like a good like half dozen episodes or something, and it just didn't feel like it was really moving.
No, I watched the first season. I couldn't watch the second season. My wife has finished both, and we actually had a long conversation last night on how she didn't like the original Peter Jackson trilogy because she just watched that like 2 years ago. Because she called it the boring movie where people walk, and and then now she's rewatching it after having watched Rings of Power, and she's enjoying it more because she's like, now I feel like I have a backstory for why Sauron is a big bad. Why do the orcs matter? Like, so she feels that she has a backstory for and lore for that, and that gives the Lord of the Rings more depth to her, I think.
Sure.
Which fair.
Sure.
I just was bored by the Rings of Power. So it's
wow.
hard for me to see it the other way, but yeah.
Yeah. I cannot so the Peter Jackson trilogy came out when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like one of those how everyone has the pieces of media that's very formative for them, like
Yeah.
For my entire life after that, like different people have called me a hobbit or like Samwise or Furryfoot, like for someone to be like, it's the boring movie where people walk. Oh. But like, I mean, whatever. Everyone's entitled to opinions, even when they're wrong. It's okay. It's okay.
But I'll be like, but you didn't like the second movie, like with it, she was like,
Deep,
oh, is that the one where they keep on walking to the mountain? Like, yes, it is.
Yeah, but then they're at the mountain, and then there's 10,000 orcs coming, and they're like, whoa, and like they're fighting, and it was. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
No,
it's okay.
I think she watched the extended versions, and that was the first thing she got into. So those are also slower paced, and there's extra stuff in that's not necessary.
I do actually feel it's been a while since I've watched the theatrical of Return of the King, but like what do you guys think, Bo and Joe? And I feel like maybe the theatrical of Return of the King might be better. I said it. Like,
I don't know that I've watched them recently enough to compare.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see if anyone responds in chat, but
yeah,
I do want to talk about your books, James. I like to,
there's a lot of walking in those two, actually.
Perfect segue.
Yeah.
There's wow. I thought I knew you, Joe, but not a huge Lord of the Rings fan. He says unacceptable.
Joe's thing is really Downton Abbey.
Yeah, that's his favorite fantasy.
Yeah.
Secretly binge watches Pride and Prejudice like once a that's what inspires his superhero sci-fi fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Anyway. Yeah, wanted to just chop it up and chat a little bit, but now that we got a few more people hanging out, let's talk about your books, James. So Malitu trilogy, am I pronouncing it right?
Malitu, yeah.
Malitu. Yeah. All right. How did we get the name Malitu? Tell me. I want to
know. So, I mean, it might sound much more creative than it actually is. I just, Malitu in world means bad or corrupted spirit. So Mal, bad, espiritu, bad spirit, Malitu.
I like it.
I basically made Brangelina with with In World.
Listen, it's called a portmanteau, and that sounds way nicer than saying I made Brangelina.
I like. I'm gonna keep on going,
All right.
Brangelina.
Listen, you do you. No, that's good. All right. So, James Lloyd Dulin with the Brangelina trilogy.
Yes. I appreciate you reading my whole title.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes.
And of course, the new book is called Only a Grave Will Do. And with a title like that, I'm assuming it's going to be just cozy slice of life the whole way through.
There are tea parties. People have a lot of fun playing games. There's some back talk and gossip, but we get through it.
Gossip. Oh my gosh, the vapors. Yes. No.
My dearest. Whew.
Yes. No. All right. So let's get it. Like, Only Grave Will Do.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, there's some action, but you mentioned kind of that, like, it's the story with kind of a dual timeline, and there's a story of the mentor, and then kind of the mentor story, and they're both kind of being delivered at the same time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
So
go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say. So in the present storyline, Kaylo, our main character, finds Tan being accosted by a couple of Imperial soldiers, and against his better judgment, jumps in and saves her, and now feels responsible for her, given that she's just lost her parents to these soldiers and is kind of in a similar place to where he was about 18 years ago in his life, really wanting vengeance and about to get herself killed. And so he tries to calm her down and keep her from doing that by telling her his story. At the same time, he's training her, he's helping her learn about her powers. And so we have that storyline, and they're learning about each other. They're trying to survive this world around them where, there are battles going on for the future of their people and their land. But it's this really internal story between these two people just trying to make it through. And then in the past, you learn about how Kaylo became an exile, how he kind of hid himself away for the last 12 years and why. How he became a well-known rebel leader and how all that came to be. How he became as kind of morose and sad as he is in the future. And so you get to learn all that backstory. And what I wanted to do was this. It's basically these two people in a very similar situation that would have walked a very similar path if not for one of them had somebody to guide them and show them a way that wasn't necessarily so self-destructive. And so show that juxtaposition between the two stories. Obviously, there are lots of differences between where their paths go, but there's a lot of similarities, and part of that is exploring just how lonely it can be for people within a situation where they're losing so much and they don't have people to count on. And the other part of that is Kaylo is a spirit thief, which in world is something that his people find taboo. He can steal other people's magics, and there are a lot of stories about how people like him have ruined things in the past and taken advantage of things in the past and become corrupt Malitu in the past. And so there's this idea that even he thinks about people like himself, that they're inherently dangerous, they're inherently monstrous. And so there's a part of him that so self-isolates. So there are a lot of themes in there that I think people can relate to, and I know that I probably self-projected as well. The, themes about trying to find home, trying to find out what it means to be you, telling yourself a story about who you are that's not necessarily true, but it becomes true because you think it so much. Those kind of things come into play.
But yeah, I love it. That sounds awesome. I was just thinking, like, the telling yourself something true, and like that's a super interesting thing. And we were also talking just briefly that behind me is Name of the Wind somewhere, and like that's something that they kind of touch on that I know is going to become more of a thing. Hi Jim. Also,
hey, Jim.
As you were talking, I was looking away because I was looking on Amazon for your book. And of course, book 1 is sitting at 4.2 stars out of 5 with 166 reviews on Amazon, and same 4.2 on Goodreads with 269 ratings. So like, I think you might know what you're doing, you know?
Well, I mean, it's always hard because I am someone who has a really hard time celebrating the small wins, especially like even when I hit the goal, like I'm about to finish this trilogy and my next thought is, okay, what do I need to do next? And how am I going to accomplish that? And what's the next goal? And this didn't hit these numbers. It didn't do this. I see other people hitting these numbers that I want to be hitting. How are they doing? It's just a lot of that negative internal space that I think a lot of authors sit in because we are pushed to be our own marketers at the same time as we are writing. If I was just writing, that would be a very different thing. But the whole trying to sell it and trying to keep the numbers up and trying to find new ways in an ever-changing landscape of marketing to reach readers, it's it's a hard thing to navigate and a hard thing to manage, kind of the personal and emotional side of that.
James.
You can't relate at all. I know.
All right. We're gonna get back to your books, but now we're gonna be on this for a minute. like, oh my gosh, like I completely get you, and I think that's such an easy thing to kind of fall into. Not only as writers, not only because we have to wear all the hats and like be the marketer and do all the things if we're gonna get any kind of success, but like just as people in this world that we've created these days. There's this amazing TED Talk that I am going to share, maybe even on the chat at some point. But the guy's named Sean Aker, and it's on one of the TED Talks, and it's not long. It's like maybe 15 minutes. I love it so much. Like the dude is funny, but he makes such a good point about how we all do that. We all kind of push the goalposts further and further. You know, you got the thing, great, got to do the next thing. You know, and it's destructive and it's not helpful. And his whole thing is like he studies positive psychology, right? So he studies like where are the outliers on the mean, the people that are overperforming, and what are they doing, and how can we all become overperforming? And one of the things that he kind of discovered was essentially like the happiness advantage. So basically, like we always think that if we reach the goal, then we're going to be happy, or then there's time to be happy, and that's bullshit. Right? The way to perform better is to learn how to be happier now and to enjoy the journey, you know, and to focus on that. And he really he lays out a good case for it, and then he lays out some things that you can do that are really helpful towards that. I was almost going to say towards that goal. I'm going to say towards that mindset, you know. But yeah, man, it's so good. And yes, I highly recommend that. But I mean, I get you. I have to watch that one like every once in a while just to remind me to not kind of sabotage myself with like just like constantly. I mean, geez, I could, I'm feeling a little like, man, it's been a bit of a crappy week. I haven't done the things I wanted to do, you know. But like, it's been a good week. I had a great day today. I got to take my daughter to a roller rink, and then like, like my 4-year-old daughter is swimming without floaties lately. It's amazing, you know. Those are the things that I need to like pay attention to, not like whether I hit word count goals that nobody cares about but me, you know.
So what I'm hearing you say is I will be happy when I get a Netflix deal. That's what I heard. That's the point of the TED Talk, right?
Were you even listening, James? God. No, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And as soon as the Netflix deal comes, that's when. Or you could be like Sarah J. Maas and talking with Margot Robbie about an adaptation because they had coffee together. That'll work. Yeah. That might be that's yeah.
Margot and I are grabbing coffee next month, so we're good.
Perfect. Yeah. Lucky you. Next month
she doesn't know, but I'll be there.
And when she does show up, that's when you'll be happy, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
Yep. Perfect. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I had to ban myself from like checking on sales numbers for a while because like it was affecting whether I could be happy for the day or not.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And
yeah.
It's just some really negative headspace that I think it's easy to fall into. And so even when I hear somebody like yourself go, "Oh, you're doing great. Look at how many reviews you have." All I hear is like, "But it's not this many." And that's something that I'm working on flipping, which is to say I need an intervention. And Nicholas, can you please set that up for me?
First, it's gonna be a TED Talk. Then I'm gonna be the one that shows up for your coffee instead of Margot. So you're gonna be so disappointed, but like I will put on a blonde wig for you, and like there we go.
You'd look pretty. You're gonna be at Worldcon, right? So perfect opportunity.
Sir. There we go. Go. So is Bo and so is Joe. I don't think Jim is going in the chat. Not sure about good Sir Bob that was also hanging out in the chat. Bob, if you're going, let me know. But no, I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be there's so many like gonna be fun people to hang out with and some cool things to see and stuff. That'll be fun.
I'm excited for it. It'll be my first con.
Yeah, I can't like what a first con to go to. I can't believe you haven't been to like any. Well, I mean, I guess I can whatever, but like I don't know. You're a nerd. Clearly, you wrote a fantasy book. You know, you wrote a whole fantasy series. Like, how have you not been to a nerd con? You know,
part of it is when I started like really thinking about. I had other things that I was focusing my time on before. Like before I got into writing books, I was really focused on poetry and doing poetry slam. And I was competing on teams and going to different competitions to do this kind of stuff.
I have no idea of this world. So what? Poetry slam teams are a thing?
Yeah. There's like national poetry competitions. And I went to the National Poetry Slam as a part of the Baton Rouge Eclectic Truth team. And we competed.
How does the team work? How do you compete? I need, like, tell me more.
Yeah, I'll break it down. So, so for a slam, you have 3 minutes to do a poem.
Okay.
3 minutes and 10 seconds is your grace period. And then you have 5 judges that will throw up a score out of 10 at the end. Depending on where you're at, usually they'll cut the highest and lowest score, and then the middle 3 are your scores. And so that's individual slams. Usually there are 2 rounds for individual slam, and whoever has the highest cumulative score is the winner for that night. Wow. For a team, you typically have 4 rounds with 4 teams in a slam. And you can either put up an individual poet for each round, or you can put up a group poem. And each slot has to have a different individual. So your team is 4. So if a group poem goes up, that has to be one of those 4's individual slots, or account for the individual slot. So like I can't go up and then also have a group poem that is my poem. It has to be somebody else's. There's a lot of technicalities, but essentially 16 poems go up. they're all scored, and whatever team gets the highest score moves forward.
Wow.
It's
Dude.
also its own very nerdy culture.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, of course. Like, I mean, well, yeah, in that, of course, there's its own culture, and then, of course, also it's very nerdy. But like, that sounds fantastic. I bet it's lovely folks. Really, you still keep in touch with them?
Some of them, yeah. But it can be. It also has the negative side of it is because you're judging art, and so there are people who get very competitive, and so that also kind of took the fun out of it for me for a while, because I would get too competitive, or other people would get too competitive, and then it then becomes an issue of like now everybody's complaining about the scores they got or the judge's bias or the slot order that they got. Everybody complains instead of just appreciating, hey, we all got to hear a lot of really cool poems.
Yeah. That's kind of a shame, but I get it. Sean, hello, Sean. Thanks for hanging out. Sean asked, "Do you have poetry in your books?" Which I think
do. I
nice.
do. So in the first book, there's not as much. I have a couple of like stanzas from some songs that I made up for the world. But in the second two books, there's a poet character that is introduced. And they will often bring in a poem that they think is apropos and confuse the shit out of other people. And so that's my fun little way to add the little poetry into the books here and there. But also I like to add a little purple into my prose here and there too.
I was gonna say, I suspect as like a former poet, your prose is probably like fairly lyrical. Purple makes sense. Yeah.
A little, yeah.
Word. Jim asked, yeah, Sean, love that. I love that too. I think that's really cool. Jim asked, like, or why rather, but he's asking, like, when and why you left the poetry competition world. Is it kind of because of that, of the competitiveness that you were talking about it, or was it kind of like a hunger to write longer stories that couldn't fit in nearly 3 minutes?
So both, and I had always wanted to write a book, but I never thought like it always seemed like an out of reach thing. And so when I was writing poetry, I was really getting into the competition of things. And then I started to get really jaded by the competition. There's certain things you can do in a poem that will make an audience clap. And once you learn those tricks, you can manipulate a poem about any subject and make it a claptrap and really bring the audience in and get audience engagement, which is great, but it makes for shitty poetry. And so I kind of got jaded about writing those type of poems, and I just wanted to write other stuff. And so I started writing a lot of poetry and not performing as much, and I got further and further away from it. And then I just decided, hey, why not try to write a book? And I had some ideas generating, and so I sat down and tried to write it. And the first draft was awful, but eventually it got somewhere good.
Why do we ever think that the first draft of the first book we write is going to be good? Like, why is that even like a thought? Like the first
didn't
time I
expect
played
it to be
basketball,
good.
I couldn't like throw the ball close to the hoop. You know what I mean? Like the first time I took a swing with a golf club, I hit the ground, dude.
Yeah. I think what really threw me was I didn't expect it to be as bad. Because after I started writing the book, what I realized is I couldn't edit along the way, or I'd get into just the endless editing trap. And so I just wrote through with all the errors along the way that didn't make sense with the plot progression. Like everything had holes here, there, and the other. And then like I started to do more diving into like video essays and things like that on YouTube about how to write and how to put things together. And I was just like, oh, I did all of the bad things. Like I was not in a specific POV at all. I just jumped head. sometimes in the same paragraph, just sentence after sentence, going like, and he thought, and then he thought.
Yeah,
it was a mess.
You know what's funny though? Like, I mean, like I know that those are the rules, and I understand that. Like you know how good artists need to understand the rules, but then they can break them.
Yeah.
You know, there's a series I'm reading that I'm not going to like claim as like amazing art, but it's called He Who Fights with Monsters, and it's incredibly popular on a serialized website called Royal Road. And then like the model that works there is people serialize on Royal Road, but then there's advanced chapters for the serialization on Patreon.
Gotcha.
This dude is making like $60,000+ a month on his advanced chapters on Patreon. He's at least he actually just had a bunch of health problems. Shirtaloon, if you ever see this, I hope you're doing all right. But yeah, he making tons of money, but he does that sort of thing where he's like, oh, this person thought this, and this person, he breaks some of the rules, but like I don't think that you know, his fans care. And I think like a lot of it is because for them, like they appreciate that he's generally putting out content pretty consistently, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think about it this way. Before I started studying the craft of writing a novel, most novels I read were amazing. Like it was so easy to make me fall in love with a story before I started trying to learn how to write one, and learning what mistakes I made. Because now I'll read a story and I'll be like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. Oh, this is not great. And it's so easy to pick apart. But before, when I was just consuming it, like it was so easy for me to love something. And that is the majority of readers.
Right.
So if you think about it in those terms, like the majority of readers don't care if you head hop as long as they can understand the story. The majority of readers won't care if you like break this rule, that rule, or the other. They'll just kind of follow along with you for the plot. They don't even care too much about consistency. Like he had blue eyes in the last book, now he has brown eyes. They don't give a shit. They don't remember. But we do. And the people who often write Goodreads and things like that and track their number of books that they've read through the year, they care a little bit more. Because reading is like their hobby. It is the thing they do.
Right.
And that's very cool. And I really appreciate those people, but that's not necessarily the audience who's reading the majority of your sales.
Right. I had a really interesting conversation with my cousin not that long ago. My cousin is not so much of a writer, although he has some ideas and he'd like to kind of maybe do some writing at some point, but he is an avid audiobook consumer. Just like he's constantly listening to audiobooks, and he listens to dozens and dozens, maybe probably more than 100 books in a year, you know? Just he's plowing through. But I was talking with him about like, you know, goals, even like going back to that other conversation, but like what are the kind of like the dreams, the scenarios. And another friend of mine he was saying he'd love to, you know, maybe someday like win a Hugo or a Nebula or something along those lines, right? And I was saying that's cool, you know, I like that idea, but I am more, if I had to pick, and I kind of feel like sometimes it's a little bit of a choice, but if I had to pick, I would rather have a whole ton of fans than like one award. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would rather be, you know, I would rather have a whole ton of fans, and like especially like something like Star Wars, which I don't think is like hugely well regarded, and at least not anymore in terms of like, you know, not going to be a Star Wars movie winning an Academy Award anytime soon. But like at the same time, Star Wars, like there's so many fans that like they spawn the 501st Cosplay Legion that shows up at like hospitals with sick kids, and they're in like dressed like stormtroopers and stuff. That is so much cooler to me than an award, you know?
Yeah.
So I was discussing this with my cousin, and he was saying like he thinks that the difference is kind of like writing for the populace, like the sort of the average consumer, versus writing essentially for other artists. Because if you're going to win an award, then it's going to be given by like other artists, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, for me, I don't know. Like to me, that was like a very interesting point. But do you think there's any validity to that, or is that crap? And if you had to choose between the two, hopefully it's not a choice, but if you had to choose between the two, which would you prefer, like tons of fans or prestigious awards?
So I don't necessarily think there's a hard delineation of like it's either one or the other, because I think you can have books like the Greenbone Saga. I think that has a large fan base. Probably not the biggest in the world, but it has a large fan base and also has won several awards. Murderbot
I was going to
is
say
now
Murderbot, yeah.
An Apple TV series. I think you can do both. I think there is some validity that writing for the general populace and writing for the artist will get you different places. I tend to write for myself. Like the stories that I write aren't necessarily.
That's the best answer.
I mean,
seriously,
the writing is for yourself. The editing is for others. Because I want the stories too. That's why I wrote these, because I wanted to know these stories and I wanted to tell myself these stories. The making sure there are no typos is for everybody else. Because I actually don't care about typos. I care about other people seeing my typos. So that's that. But if I had to choose between like winning an award or having, massive fan appeal, I think the answer is pretty obvious to me. I would rather the fan appeal. Although I think I'd be really excited by the first person cosplaying as one of my characters. To meet a crowd of people cosplaying as my characters, I'd be just like, this is too much.
This is over. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. That might be. I don't know.
I don't need that. I'm too shy for that amount of attention. Like, people give me a compliment, I'm all like, okay, let's move the subject. Like, that's.
I do that sometimes too.
Yeah. I struggle with a compliment. So sitting in a line sitting at a table at a Comic-Con and having a line of people dressed as my characters ready to tell me how much they love my story would at the same time be a dream and a nightmare, because I'm like, God, I don't know how to respond to any of this.
we're just dreaming, Mike. We're just dreaming. No,
Mike, you're gonna cosplay as one of my characters. That's what we're talking about.
Mike and Ro and Bo. Yep. We've added Bo Kelly to the list. Yep. And then it'll be a crowd, and then you'll all make James very nervous, and it'll be perfect. I was watching a interview with Matt Dinneman, who wrote Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yeah.
He puts advanced chapters on Patreon also. He also has polls on his Patreon, and sometimes you can, like, he'll put a poll up of like, what should this fan box be? What should like this loot item that the characters get be? And here's some options, right? But he also did one about like the location for one of the books, so like some of the settings. And so anyway, like in this interview, like the interviewer was like, so you picked this location that's from planet Earth. Like, what made you want to pick that? And he's like, yeah, all of you out here that are Patreons, fuck you. So, I mean, you could take that tack too if you want. You could just like insult your fan. No, I mean, they all laughed. It was pretty good.
I don't want to ostracize my fan.
Yeah. Ooh. Wow. So that's good. I would also love Jim's comment of that kind of attention would give me a Rothfuss complex.
Oh, yeah. I feel that even to some extent, like writing before I released No Heart for a Thief, I had already written a couple of drafts of No Safe Haven. So I already had the story together. I I had the story and plot corrected to where I wanted it to be. I had to update and edit some of the language and get it to where I wanted it to be for readers, but the story was there.
Mm-hmm.
Only a Grave Will Do is the first novel I've written since I've published. And so it's the first thing that people have asked for from me. Everything I've just put out and seeing if anybody wants.
Sure.
But this one, people are like, so when's the release date? When's it coming? And that is a very different feeling. And so I can't imagine being Patrick Rothfuss and being, I don't even know how long it's been now. It's what, 12 years since his last book?
I think that's,
Something like that.
Yeah, 12 years
if you're not counting the novellas.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I do feel bad, and I know that there's like legitimate criticisms to have with Rothfuss right now, and I don't want to discount those, but I do feel really bad for him because he's clearly a perfectionist, and there is no way that this next book is going to satisfy all the fans. It will not satisfy everyone.
It must be wild to have channels that literally have sprung up on YouTube and pages dedicated to just theories about what your book means and what little lines that you put in the middle of book 2 or book 1 meant. And the pressure to meet that demand, I would find so isolating, and also just I would freeze under that pressure. Now, I hopefully wouldn't promise to release an audio version of the first chapter and raise money for it and then not follow through. I think that's the thing where I go like, I don't have sympathy for that. But I have sympathy for the whole, there's so much pressure on that man.
Yes. And Yep. Moving right along.
Yeah.
Yep. I do like what Jim said here. If he's imagining you trying to write a fantasy novel that's a claptrap, and what that means, and like I think that's kind of funny. I will say there's a person in my writing group, and he wrote a really excellent novel that's not out yet, but it's called Exit Wounds, and I read his whole novel and I was like, this is great. There's this one point where this one character has this really dramatic moment, and I really want like this character, like I didn't use the phrase claptrap, but I did say like specifically I want this character to kind of have that moment from that movie where people are just walking all the time, but that that last one where was it Eowyn? She says, she pulls off her helmet and says, "I am no man," you know? And I'm like, I really want like that moment at the like some like a line like that at this moment. And he's like, "Ooh, good," you know? And that I think was a little bit of a claptrap, but at that moment it worked, you know? So
and I think claptraps can, like, in the context of this, a claptrap would mean something that is put in there inauthentically to bring out something from the audience that is just it's put on. It's not necessarily something that comes from a story or a narrative place, but it's coming from a place of, I know characters love dragons, so this is going to be in there. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of authors use those devices, but I don't necessarily think of them as inauthentic. Like, using a dragon isn't necessarily inauthentic, but deciding, oh, people like dragons, so I'm going to put in dragons. People like vampires, so there are going to be vampires in there too. People like, and doing all of that is kind of the equivalent to some of the poetry I was dealing with, was like, oh, you're just going to throw in everything that people like into 1 3-minute segment and then go boom. And in 3 minutes, it sounds great. But when you sit down with it, it's not great. So I think that's what you want to avoid. You want to bring in enough of the audience appeal that you can still turn it into something authentic and meaningful without it flooding and becoming this just put on like costume that you're wearing.
Yeah.
Who was the author? Very famous author who like hated fantasy and would go on and on about how he was the only one who could do it right. He died a couple of years ago. I can't remember his name. But I've also like Daniel Green has done several like just takedowns of his work. Just long rants about his work. But I think there are people like that that try to just play on the hype of certain things, but I think they come across as inauthentic when you read it.
Yeah. Terry Good. That was Terry Goodkind?
Yes. Yeah.
No. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He would famously talk down about the genre and how awful it is and how mind numbing it is and how other people can't do it. But his is high art.
Fuck you. That's bullshit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I'm glad I haven't dived too far into all of his work yet. Then, whatever. Well, James, we talked a little bit about the series.
Yeah.
Only a Grave Will Do is going to be coming out in June 24th, and that's the last in the series, right?
It is. Yeah.
So we've kind of pitched the series. Is there like, what do you have a spoiler-free pitch for book 3?
Spoiler-free pitch for book 3 is hard.
Or like a spoiler minimal pitch?
Yeah, I mean, in book
series.
3, you finally find out how Kaylo became a recluse, how he left the rebellion, and why so many people from his past hate him. So if you're curious on how he got to where he is, you'll find that in there.
That's cool.
You'll also get to see a lot of so the series starts out very intimate between just Tan and Kaylo and these small relationships, but I think book 3 gets to come some pretty epic proportions in terms of larger scale conflict. So if you're interested in seeing where that can come from in the series, definitely pick it up.
Nice. Of course, you also have a prequel novella. So prequel. Is it a prelude that you wrote before, or is it a prequel that you did write after, but it is intended to be like kind of like a book 0?
So it's completely detached from the story. It's just in the same world. So it talks about a historical event within the context of No Heart for a Thief and the Malitu series. So it's all about the ending of the 100-Turn War in Ennea before Ennea was colonized, before the foreign empire, the Gauch, had anything to do with the world. This talks about a group of kind of pacifists who were trying to bring about an end to the war that was just thriving through Ennea over the past 100 years, and talks about is there ever a use of violence that is justified in the pursuit of peace?
Ooh. I'm gonna have to read that one because I want to know your where what the story says about that. Because have you ever watched the with kind of very very similar? Have you ever watched the movie Kingdom of Heaven with Orlando Bloom?
I feel like I have, but I can't remember it right now.
It's about like Jerusalem, and he's initially in France and black. Anyway, deals with a very similar thing, and really in a very interesting way. Like, you know how like characters make a decision and you're like, what are you doing? But like it's completely like consistent for the character, but you're still like, no. That was one of those storytelling moments for me with that movie.
I mean, I just find it such an interesting thing in my life because it's something that I've thought about a lot, especially in terms of like current day protesting and what should be within the realm of pushing back on things. Like is it acceptable to say to oppressed people that the only way you can fight oppression is by abandoning any tools of violence and being nonviolent in your action, especially when so much violence is forced upon you.
Right.
And so the question of like, can violence be a tool of peace, or does it just turn back into oppression on the other end if some kind of flip does happen? If a group is able to gain any kind of power with violence, is that necessarily going to mean that that group is now going to be oppressive in turn? And, I think we have seen different versions of this throughout history,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always a question in my mind. I think early in my life, the idea of pacifism and nonviolence was very attractive because I think it has this purity, this quality of like nobility, but it also feels like it in some ways is disingenuous to the reality of what is going on in a lot of people's lives, to ask them to never use the tools that are being used against them. And so I think it's a hard question to answer. I don't think I ever have a right answer on it,
Right.
but it's something I just wanted to explore in the context of a fantasy world.
Yeah, super interesting. And I think like it's I think I feel like it's kind of a modern question because I feel like one of the elements that's necessary for a nonviolent movement to even be possible is like broad awareness,
Yeah,
and you just couldn't have that to the same degree even like 200 years ago for
yeah,
compared with like now where broad awareness is very easy to like achieve. But like I think of the civil rights movements in the United States in the 60s and the sit-ins that were happening and that sort of thing. And if if those stories didn't get out, they wouldn't have mattered. That kind of
yeah,
protests wouldn't have mattered and wouldn't have moved the needle if it wasn't shown on the national scale and even the international scale.
yeah. I agree, and I think in some ways it's becoming harder again
Mm,
because now there's so much misinformation and people being able to manipulate things. Even if there's a video of it, they're like, "But yeah, you didn't really get the whole thing," or it's manipulated in some way, or
yeah.
that's false truths or
Yeah.
whatever. And so
Or like
I
I
think,
mean, you know what would happen like that you could have Rosa Parks on a bus, like, and if it happened like today, someone would be like, "Yeah, but Rosa 5 years ago actually said this really jerky
yeah,
thing and like she's not a saint." You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing happens so much now.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right about there needs to be information flow for it to work, but I think there's so much information overflow now that
Mm,
also people are desensitized because we see so much violence,
yeah.
real and fake violence,
Yeah.
that I think that it's harder for some something to matter to us when we see it.
I yeah. I I want to write more at some point in like a science fiction context, I think, of I really believe that like conflict is inherent with human beings,
Hmm.
and in order for us
So you're
to
not a
get,
Star Trek guy.
but I mean, I think like Star Trek, I like, but I think a lot of it works. But I'd like what I would add to the Star Trek universe would be uh productive forms of competition, right?
Okay.
Like, so the space race between the Soviet Union and the United States was had a lot of unsavory undercurrents and sort of
Yeah.
underlying causes, right? But if you sort of set aside like racing for ICBMs and whatever, then it's just a Yeah, if you said that part, I'm laughing at Jim Wilburn saying like we're Trekkies. I get it. Like I'm not pooping on Gene here. You know, I'm just like, you know, I'm saying the space race ended up like being kind of a net positive. I think overall, you know, there's some people that lost their lives along the way. There's a ton of like money spent on it, but like the technology that was created, and not only that, but like the aspirational drive of it and the way it inspired an entire generation of American engineers is a net gain, you know? And that was
I
a
think there's something to
really
be said for that. Yeah.
right.
I would.
But we wouldn't have been so driven about it if it hadn't been a competition. We would not have been, you know? I mean, and you can see that because like we sort of we hit the goals that we set out to hit, and the Soviets weren't competing on the same level anymore. And you know, my father spent his entire career on the space shuttle, and I'm not saying like anything that happened in that period was bad, but it wasn't nearly at the same pace of progress that it was during the 60s, you know?
Yeah. And I think a lot of when I hear things like competition breeds progress, I think it can. I think competition can also create. Look at what we have today. Like you have competition between cell phone companies. They're not necessarily coming up with anything new. They're just coming up with something new to sell because they've realized they're not in competition with each other. They're in competition with their sales.
Right.
And so just the idea that they do this pisses me off. The idea that you can build a product that is capable of so much more, but then you cut its capability to sell it for less because you need to have different segments of your market and be able to sell something for lower, higher, and higher. And so you cut the force of you cut the capability of a product, and you stifle it in order to sell it to somebody for less.
Right.
Instead of working on building something new and something better, they're working on how to cut the legs out of under a product in order to market it to a certain demographic of person. And so I think we've lost that space in a similar way where like we were talking about the protests, how like that need to be able to see what's going on mattered, and now we've gotten that over influx of information. I think we've also gotten to a point where that competition breeds progress isn't necessarily true anymore.
No,
and but is also pathological. Like it's put in this kind of dogma way as like that's the only way progress would exist. Like we'd all be sitting on our asses if they didn't have a paycheck. I would still be writing. I would still want to do things. I would still want to be out there and talk to people. And you know, I don't.
That's all right. That's all. I think you're right on the money. I think I actually like a good friend of mine. I nudged him into actually being a socialist because like, in a very similar way that you're talking about. Like he was like, oh man, this was many years ago when we were in college together. But he was like talking about this new medical technology. And he's like, this is gonna be amazing. This is gonna save lives. And I'm like, only if they can figure out how to make money on it.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? And that was like the moment, you know, for him where he's like, fuck capitalism, you know. And like, but and I hear you, and I'm like, well, so what I'm like saying is I'm not trying to be a champion of capitalism. Right. Let's go space mining. Heck yeah. No. It's more like it. So I think in like the eventual sci-fi universe that I write this in, because like I'm not saying, I think like it's more about big projects, not a fucking new cell phone. It's about going to the moon. It's about like the World's Fair or whatever, where like the World's Fair would create like all these cool attractions. Then like people were trying to outdo each other in an exciting way, you know. So what I would do in add a little bit of like irreverent humor, although I think there's like some merit here, but probably not. But I would like the way that I would judge my competitions would be to like have jury selection of like 7-year-olds, because they still are like, they maintain innocence and they're like uncorruptible, except unless you have candy. But like that's a whole, Yes, so that would be in my like sci-fi proposal for this. Like it would, yeah, we'd have like a jury of judges that are all like, little innocent little 7-year-olds, because they're not going to be like, wow, it's only going to work if like you got this and that, and they're going to be like, that's cool. I think that's the sort of sentiment that I think we should be striving for more.
Yeah. But is there ever a point where, like, I think this goes back to you're turning your whole series into what I do in my head about books. Like the next goal is never enough. I need the next one and the next one and the next one. I got to keep on driving. And so
Wow.
you're essentially creating that in your world of the only thing, like there has to be a drive forward, which is what all these like. I used to work on college campuses, and there's always a saying, if you're not growing, you're shrinking. Like, that's actually not true. You could be staying the same, and that exists as a concept. But they're like, no, we got to build more buildings. We got to let in more students. We got to have more classes, more programs, more this, more that, and the other. And this drive to grow actually becomes the point, instead of the education, or instead of the actual goal. The goal is growth now, instead of whatever the project's point is.
That's a really good point. Maybe I'd make it where like, if the 7-year-olds declare you as the winner, you can't compete anymore. You're just done. But like, I don't know. That's a fair point. Like,
I mean, you
also
could turn it into like somewhat of a dystopia of like, there's this.
No,
focus
I mean, I could,
drive.
but like,
Yeah.
I'm never gonna write like complete dystopia. I'm never gonna write like Hunger Games, because that's just too depressing. Like, and like, if I wanted to be depressed, I'd just turn on the news. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what I want to write. I want to write like, my good guys are gonna win. Sorry, spoilers. Like, but
Fine.
right? Eventually, they'll have to fight, and it's about the journey.
Yeah.
But like, and maybe Edda to lose her head, but what's her name? Cersei isn't going to be on this throne at the end. That's like, that's what we're saying. Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't write Hunger Games. I can't go too dystopian. I can go like a little. There'll be like a little dystopian in some of the stuff. Actually, there's some stuff that I'm writing. There's like a little like. There was one a work in progress prior to what like I'm really working on now. But like, so I was working on something else earlier, and then I couldn't figure out how to make it work. I think I got good ideas now, but I had to put it on the back burner for a while. But that one, like, Earth is no longer inhabitable for like, humans ruined it. So that part's a little dystopian, but like the rest of the universe is a little like sort of fun.
We figured it out after we left.
I don't know that we figured it out, but we stopped like blowing up planets as a whole. So I mean, that's a plus,
I mean, that is good.
Yeah. You take your wins, right?
What's a couple of planets? We didn't destroy most of the universe.
We didn't even destroy most of the solar system. It's just one. It happened to be the one where everything happened, but whatever. Like, fine.
You're sounding like a really glass half empty kind of person. Listen, we might be destroying Earth, but we didn't destroy the other 7. Okay.
That's right. And we could also just reclassify that 8th one. We'll just call it a planet. Call Pluto a planet again. Look, bada bing, bada boom. We're back to having 8 planets. Huh?
See?
Right? All right. James, I feel like I could talk to you for another hour, but at the same time, I think it's been long enough.
We could talk forever, but I'm done.
we could talk forever, but at some point I'm gonna need to sleep. Like, like I gotta get up in the morning and get my kids to school because it's not Memorial Day again tomorrow. Like, That's really what this is about, you know?
Yeah. Blame the kids.
Yep. James, where can people find and follow you online, and where can they get your books?
Well, my books are available. They're available wide, but only on ebook on Amazon. So you can find my books there. If you look up No Heart for a Thief, No Safe Haven, or Only a Grave Will Do is on pre-order for ebook. You can find me on my website, jamesldulin.com, and I'm available on Twitter and Blue Sky at James L. Dulin, and TikTok under the same name, although I don't do a whole lot on there anymore. But, just Google my name, I'll pop up.
There you go. Yeah, that's why I use Nicholas W. Fuller, because there are other Nicholas Fullers in the world, but like there ain't like another Nicholas W. Fuller. Like you Google that and you're gonna find me, you know?
Not yet.
Listen, I don't know what you're up to, but like
that's my next pen name.
Yeah. Cheers. No. And Only a Grave Will Do. It comes out June 24th, but it's already available for pre-order, right?
Yes, that's right.
So go get it. And obviously the novella, I think that's only 99 cents too, right? So that's a great entry point if no one has started yet, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Wonderful. James, this has been a delight, sir. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a great time.
Absolutely. Jim says this was awesome, so there we go. Like at least one of them.
That's all the praise I need. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate all of you hanging out and being with us tonight. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. And for everyone, James, and everyone watching, no one's told you today, you're an absolute legend.